Thank you for joining us this morning for our Bible study. This week we're going to be in Psalm 139, and this is one of my personal favorite Psalms. I'm sure that it is yours, and so I'm really looking forward to taking some time to meditate on some of the truths from Psalm 139. So let's really just very quickly give an overview, and I would probably summarize the overview by saying this is a psalm all about God's intimate and deep, complete knowledge of you and I. And so as we think about that, let's consider a few of the words that we find in this psalm. And really, as we do that, we're going to find that it's both comforting and convicting how much God really knows about us. So the first word I want us to look at is the word search. And you're going to see that in verse 1, and you're going to see it in verse 23. And you actually see it on two different ends of the spectrum. In verse 1, it's this reminder that God has already searched us and He knows all about us. But in verse 23, it's that kind of the closing thought where the psalmist is saying, oh, I want you to search me. I want you to know me. And truly, our God knows all about us. He knows us from the very depths of our soul. And it's a wonderful thought for us to kind of come to the full circle where we stop and we say, Lord, I want you to search me. I know you already have. I know you already know all about me, but I want you to search me. And I hope that's where we finish today. But let's keep going with a few more words that I want us to highlight. And the second word is know. You've already heard me say the word know. We find that in verse 1, 2, 4, 6, 23. Again, this is kind of a theme through the psalm, this idea of God's knowledge of us, the way that He knows us. And this is a general word that really summarizes the theme of the passage, but it's also a word that needs no explanation because we understand this. We say things like, well, you don't really know me, but God certainly does know us. And so when we consider this on a human level, there's typically from one human to the next, kind of a shallowness in relationship to the average human relationship we have. You know, for example, somebody comes up and they say, how you doing? And you say, I'm doing fine. And you're thinking on the inside, you probably don't actually want to know how I feel or how I'm doing, or you don't really want to know how I'm doing today. Well, certainly we know that God does want to know, and He does know. It's twofold. He wants to know, and He knows. So it's a wonderful truth that we start thinking about this. Verse 2 says that God knows what our common actions are, our everyday movements and what we do every day that other people may know as well. But then verse 4 says that God knows even our thoughts, and He knows what we're going to say before we say it. And then in verses 17 and 18, some of my favorite verses in the passage, it says that God's thoughts unto us are more than the sand of the sea. Now, that's a lot of thoughts. Have you ever tried to count all the sand in a bucket? Can you imagine trying to count all the grains of sand in the sea? And that's the amount of thoughts that God has for us. So that's a wonderful amount of knowledge all about you and I. And so that helps us to understand this thought, but that takes us to our last word, and that's the word understand. Understand, we find that in verse 2, and maybe you've even said this to a friend. Well, you just don't understand. Or maybe you're calling someone in a faraway area and you're trying to explain where you live and you're saying, well, you just don't seem to understand. Well, truly, God does understand us. He can not only see our thoughts on the inside, but He's also to interpret the motive and the meaning of our thoughts. And so He knows the basis and the bias. That's an intriguing thought when we consider all that God knows about us. That's both comforting and convicting, to go back to a statement we made at the beginning. It is comforting to know that God knows when we have the right heart, the right motive, even when others don't trust it. But it's also convicting that though others may think we have the right heart motive, God knows when we don't. So it's comforting and convicting. You see, when we start thinking about these three different words and really we start meditating on this whole psalm, what we're going to come to discover is that there is a lot of things that God knows about you and I. And what that should motivate us to do is know Him more and allow Him to point out areas about ourselves that need to change. Which takes us back to that verse 23, where we're asking God, would you search me and know me, so that I can walk in ways that honor the Lord. And I hope that's your prayer today. I hope you'll take the time to read through the rest of this psalm and to meditate on some of the truths of it. I hope you'll take the time to discuss it further with your family and friends and meditate on all that God has promised us about His knowledge and understanding of you and I, so that we can come to the conclusion, Lord, would you search me and know me?